Hello my friend. Welcome to RiPLAYl. In this video we will discuss the storyline of the movie entitled Normal. Normal is a drama movie released in America in 2007. The movie tells the story of the lives of several people who change drastically after a tragic incident in the past. The movie begins with a mother who is constantly grieving after her eldest son dies. Days, months, and years go by but she still can't let go of her son who died in a car accident. The mother, named Catherine, spent most of her time at home. In addition, the loss of her son made her often call her husband unexpectedly to check on him. But that sometimes makes her husband sometimes become uncomfortable. Elsewhere, a man named Walter was seen. He who is a lecturer is teaching in class. And when the class was over, Walter was approached by one of his students named Sherry. The series also asked Walter to allow her to take classes from Walter until she graduated. Seeing that the series is quite busy as a student who doubles as a host, and because the series is quite charming, Walter finally allows it without thinking anymore. Back to Catherine who was having a meal with her relatives. Although the atmosphere is quite cheerful, Catherine still can't let go of her smile. Back where throughout the event, Catherine constantly looks gloomy. Elsewhere, a young man who had just gotten out of prison was seen. He is Jordy who was caught after being caught stealing a car with his friend. When he got out of prison, this Jordy was picked up by his father named Carl. Carl also said that he and Ellis were waiting at home. Jordy was confused by Ellis, who turned out to be Jordy's new mom. But Jordy immediately openly told his father that he didn't like Ellis. Even though he has never met her at all, so Carl is involved in an argument with Jordy. Before returning to his home. Back again to Walter who was seen brooding and looking at a piece of newspaper. From the newspaper, it turns out that there is news about a teenager who died in a car accident and how surprised Walter is that the teenager is Catherine's son. From the guilty look on his face, it seems that in the past Walter was the one who drove his son Catherine to death. Meanwhile, Jordy can finally have breakfast together again. Where Carl, who wanted to go to work, finally told the boy that Jordy had to work. Although it seems that Carl is quite well established, but he doesn't want his son to be too spoiled. Moreover, Jordy is an ex-convict. Which will be difficult to find a place to study, so the only way is to work. Ellis, who turned out to be a hot mama, couldn't do much and just listened to her husband's arguments and decisions. I'm not sure what to make of this, but I'm sure it's a good idea to take a look at some of the other things that are going on in the house. After that, his father left the house to work. Ellis also approached Jordy and calmed him down by saying that his father really missed him and really loved him, so Jordy really had to get a job as soon as possible. However, the offended Jordy sarcastically asked her what her stepmother's job was. Ellis replied that she was just a housewife who cleaned the house. Jordy became unhappy with his stepmother and emphasized to Ellis that he would never be her mother figure. Walter, on the other hand, finally meets his brother Dennis. Here it appears that Dennis is suffering from a severe mental disorder after an accident in the past. And apparently Dennis was also with Walter when the accident happened. He became traumatized because he accidentally killed a young man. Walter finally took a step by doing counseling. There he admitted that when the incident occurred he was really drunk and forced to drive his car, as a result a deadly accident occurred. In another place, it was finally seen that Jordy had gotten a job at a pizza shop. Jordy finally felt happy because one burden of his life had been passed, namely the phase of finding a job, which is a scary phase, especially since Jordy is no longer a fresh graduate. When Jordy was daydreaming alone in his room and he was confused about what to do, he decided to do the usual activities that guys do. But in the middle of the activity, it seems that Jordy forgot to lock the door to his room, which made Ellis immediately enter and catch Jordy's activities. Jordy became very embarrassed and finally went out to calm down. Not long after he sat in the park, he was suddenly approached by his old friend named Melissa. The two of them ended up chatting for a while before Melissa invited Jordy to join the weekend party. The next day while in the room, Jordy was approached by his stepmother, Ellis, politely. Ellis apologized for yesterday's incident and offered to wash Jordy's clothes as a sign of her forgiveness. But the annoyed Jordy rejected it and told Ellis to stop trying to be his mother figure. Because they are not really mother and son. Meanwhile, Walter was seen who had just finished teaching at his campus. But because it was quite complicated with his luggage, Sherry finally helped him. At first this makes them both awkward and salting because both of them happen to have the same needs, namely the need to channel their desires. And you must have understood what happened next. On the other hand, Catherine's sadness becomes more apparent. She went out of the house and every young man whose head was a little bald, she thought of as her son. It was also quite heartbreaking considering that Catherine still couldn't forget her son. The next day, Jordy, who had just returned home, accidentally saw Ellis, who had just changed her clothes. Jordy was initially silent like a fool. Ellis, who still has faith, thinks that all this is not right. She decided to leave there. But strangely in the middle of her steps, her faith was shaken which made her immediately stop her steps. In the midst of this awkwardness, these two people seemed to be following the whispers of the devil. Jordy, who was already ignorant about the risks he would take, finally ventured to approach Ellis. And you must have known that if the atmosphere is already tense like this, the ending will go in this direction. But in the middle of the incident, the voice of Carl's father was heard. Suddenly they both became panicked. Jordy, who had no choice, ended up hiding in the toilet of the room. In order to divert her husband's attention, Ellis, who inevitably has to make Carl unsuspecting, seduces her husband. And ends with the action that the audience expects. In the middle of the action, the father, who was not focused on the surrounding situation, made Jordy finally manage to escape and secure himself from the father. From this incident, the relationship between Jordy and Ellis became very close. On a daily basis, Jordy the pious and kind boy also replaces his father's role when he is busy with his office affairs. Oh my God. The time passed and Jordy, who was at work, was approached by Melissa. There, Melissa asked why Jordy didn't join the party last week. But Jordy casually replied that she was busy at the time. Finally, Melissa understood that Jordy also had other activities and Melissa's initiative to get close to Jordy emerged. She started by inviting Jordy to go home together tonight. After the two of them returned home, Melissa was invited to stop by to chat and drink coffee first in Jordy's room. But it turned out that Jordy's coffee ran out and the two of them ended up just chatting in the room. Again, because the situation allowed them to get carried away and seemingly back to getting evil whispers from the devil. But unfortunately, because Ellis knew there was a girl's car outside, she jealously stopped what the two youngsters were doing. Melissa eventually became uncomfortable being there and she immediately left Jordy behind. Melissa's presence also made Ellis feel a little jealous. This is where it can be seen that several times Ellis has sought Jordy's attention while insinuating that Jordy prefers young children over her. But Jordy doesn't want to bother too much because he's bored with his life, which is getting worse by the day, and he prefers to stay close to Melissa. Meanwhile, Jordy also dares to call Catherine and apologize for his son's death. Where Jordy turns out to be really deterred and feels guilty. Not only that, Jordy and Catherine also decided to meet at the beach. And there Jordy's tears broke out while telling the chronology of the accident that happened to Catherine's son. At that time, Jordy thought that the accident would not have happened if he had not stolen his neighbor's car. But Catherine didn't blame Jordy this time either. Where Catherine felt more upset with the person who hit her son, because Walter was known to be driving drunk at the time. After the meeting, Catherine decided to let go of her son. Where she is now trying to burn her son's remaining belongings to get rid of the sadness that has been pent up all this time. But fortunately, the bad decision to burn the items was prevented where not long after the fire started, Catherine's husband came and immediately stopped it. The two people also had an argument but fortunately the fire was extinguished. In another place, Jordy, who just came home, was shocked to see a battered Ellis. And it turned out that Ellis had told her husband about her relationship with Jordy. This also made her husband very angry. And not only that, Ellis was finally beaten up and even Jordy, who had just returned, was also affected. Carl was very disappointed in his son's barbaric actions. In the end, Carl's emotions had peaked and Jordy was kicked out of his house. He left there battered. But finally, Jordy can live a happy life with Melissa. Elsewhere, Dennis, who finally realized that the accident wasn't his fault, was finally able to recover. Where it can be seen that he can finally get out of his room and immediately date a girl he met on a matchmaking application. Meanwhile, his brother Walter is now haunted by guilt. He also goes to Catherine's house to apologize, but Catherine doesn't want to accept it at all. The movie ends with Walter, who is seen going to a pizza restaurant while accepting the bitter reality of life for him. Well, that was the storyline of the movie entitled Normal, where the stories of the three main characters tell us implicitly that life always has ups and downs. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next video.